Well, it's that time of week once again. Our resident lawyer, Despina Priala of boutique law firm Priala Legal in Runaway Bay, with us each and every Thursday to offer her legal expertise. She provides some general advice on the latest hot topics, and she has experience spanning more than 25 years in the area of property and commercial law. With us once again, good morning to you, Despina.
Good morning, Wayne. Good morning, Brooke.
Good morning, Despina. I'm in shock. This isn't about COVID.
Yes, I thought we would talk about things other than COVID because I think, we've talked about it so much and there is so much more out there in society that we need to know, and the listeners really should be kept up to date.
It is hard to believe sometimes, when you look around and listen and watch TV, etc., and read the newspaper, that there is actually anything other than COVID, but the good news is there is, and we're going to look at a couple of those things this morning.
Yeah, so back in June this year, we had a chat about the introduction of director identification numbers. So this is being rolled out on the 1st of November, very, very soon. So say if I'm a director of a small business, big business, what does this mean for me?
Yes, so this is really exciting because this is one of the first steps that the government's taken to try and prevent illegal Phoenix activity, which has been going on for a number of years in this country. And by giving directors an individual and unique identification number, it will be able to track the activities of individual directors from the 1st of November. So I myself find this very exciting, and I'm glad that this is going to be implemented. So what does that mean for everybody out there who is either an existing director or is thinking of forming a company and will become a director in the future? So first thing is that every director after the 1st of November will have to apply for this director identification number, and it's a 15-digit number, and it will start with 036 for this country. But if you are already an existing director, so prior to the 31st of October, which is the transition date, you're already a director, you still have to apply for this director ID number, but you've got a longer time period to do that. So you've got all the way up until the 30th of November next year, 2022, to actually get your a unique identification number as a director. So that's probably the first thing to say. As compared to, for example, after the 1st of November, if you choose to become a director and you are a director of a company, then you have 28 days to apply for this director identification number. And then there's another date in the future after the 5th of April 2022. You've actually got to apply for it before you even become a director. So there's a few differences there between whether you are a director now or whether you'll become a director in the future. But the point to make is that this will apply to everybody. It's just a matter of when you have to apply for this identification number. And I will give information this morning about how you can apply and where you can apply. And it's important to have this information for everybody out there because unlike, for example, if you need to do your BAS returns or you need to lodge tax returns, a lot of people normally would go to their accountant or their bookkeeper and they would get that done. This is a little bit different because what they've said is that the director themselves must apply for the director ID. You can't have anybody else apply for it. You can't have a tax agent or another agent to do it for you. And that's because you need to be able to identify yourself when you go online to apply for your own identification number.
So what does this mean for us as consumers, for example? How will this make things better when it comes to us dealing with businesses?
So the idea is that directors' activities will be able to be monitored and tracked much more easily. And the idea behind it is to prevent this illegal Phoenix activity which has been going on. And there was a Phoenix task force that was put in place sometime after September 2017 to try and prevent this illegal Phoenix activity, and this was one of the recommendations. So whether or not it will actually work remains to be seen, of course. They've recommended that this be put in place, this director ID requirement now, because they believe that it will help prevent this illegal Phoenix activity where someone claims to be a director or is a director of a company, and then that company collapses and then perhaps becomes a director of a new entity under a different name. So this forces someone to produce their own identification documents when they apply. So you can't just, for example, go online, yes, I want to get my director ID, put your name in and that's it. The process is much more rigorous than that. So when you go and apply for it, you have to gather up at the time all of your relevant identification documentation, such as your tax file number, such as your residential address that the ATO has, not a made-up address. And then you've got to have other identification documents such as bank account information, a PAYG payment summary, an ATO notice of assessment. There are steps and measures in place with this process. So when someone applies for it, they're actually doing it properly. So they're actually doing it honestly with their correct identification, so that they're not becoming a director of a company under a false identification. And that is the hope, I believe, with this recommendation by the government.
Yeah, and it sounds like obviously a bit of a process to make sure it's done correctly. So does it have to be done often? How long is it valid for? What's all that like?
Good question. Yes, that's a really good question. So it's free to apply, first of all. So at the moment, they have said that it is free to apply. Now, whether or not that will change in the future, I don't know. But at the moment, it is free. So I always say, well, if something's free, why not apply for it straight away?
Jump on it. Why not?
You never know if they'll, implement a fee down the track to motivate people. Perhaps if you don't actually apply, there might be a fee imposed. So once you apply for it and you obtain your director ID number, that is a unique number that stays with you forever. And that stays with you whether you stop being a director or you're a director of another company. So regardless of how many directorships that you may have with a lot of different companies, you only ever have the one director ID number and it stays with you forever. That's really good to know. And that's the practical advice, that you only have to do it once. It stays with you forever. It's free to apply at the moment. And you have certain timeframes that you've got to do it by. And if you don't do it by the timeframes I mentioned before, which we can go through again, there may be fines and penalties and possibly criminal consequences as a result.
And Despina, there are different rules depending on whether you've been a director for a considerable period of time or you're starting from right from the beginning.
Well, it's in terms of the time period. So some people out there might think, I've just got a small business, doesn't really apply to me. Yes, I'm a director, but nobody cares. That's not the case. So whatever company you're in, doesn't matter large, medium, small, doesn't matter what it is. If you are a director and you are a director now, then you do have a longer period to obtain this ID for yourself up until November next year, end of November 2022. But if you're starting a new business venture and you know that your accountants or somebody else is preparing or establishing a company and you are becoming a director after the 1st of November, you've only got 28 days to obtain your director ID. So really important to know, and it will affect many people out there, no doubt, that are listening. And it is just something else that you'll have to go through. And I think it's actually a really good thing because there has been a lot of illegal Phoenix activity going on for several years. And hopefully this measure that's been put in place or will be put in place soon will actually prevent that from occurring. So I'd like to give people the website for them to have a look at and navigate themselves. So the website is abrs.gov.au, and that stands for the Australian Business Registry Services. So abrs.gov.au, and they can have a look on there now if they like and start exploring and having a look at the type of things they need to do.
Fantastic. Well, everyone should jump on it right now. You're listening to Talking Law, and coming up next, we'll be discussing duty of disclosure in regards to claiming on insurance. Stay tuned. You're listening to Radio 97.